Guys, right, I'm gonna have another go at a video today, Wednesday, and I am going to try the garden. I'm still not 100% convinced I'm going to be able to fight the wind, which is quite bad. At least it's a bright day. It is cold. It's cold in the flat. It's cold. I think it's a bit warmer in the sunshine, but not massively. The wind chill is an issue. According to my neighbour, this is unseasonably cold for December here. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't have amazing heat options in my uh, rooms, unfortunately. So I've got to make the best of it, really. I also don't think I've still got quite the right angle to try and capture the nice hillside and all the rest of it kind of thing. I did think about getting a drone, which would be a little bit of a silly expense in some ways, but I think it might give you something else to look at apart from my ugly mug and get some sense of my kind of, amazing Andalusian countryside around here kind of thing, which I do appreciate. It is a challenge living here, especially for a man who's not a driver, but it is what it is, right? So I do it for the time being. So I might as well crack on, right? So today, second video of today, I want to give my review of Byzantium Endures, which is the first novel in the Colonel Piat uh, quadrilogy quartet by Michael Moorcock. Now, this is an old edition. This is a 1992 book. I didn't buy it in 1992, but I'm going to say this has been in my to be read pile for a long time because I'm pretty sure I bought this after having read about it when I was in my place in Lancaster, which was not a very happy time in my life. So I'm going to say I've probably had this since 2000, late 2007, early 2008. Not that far into 2008 because I moved with my brother with my brother in Wolverhampton in sort of Easter '08. In any case, um, and it's been kind of sitting there, and I knew it was not characteristic of the kind of stuff I had read a lot of Moorcock on. I don't think my prepositions were quite right in that sentence, but bear with. Because I, of course, adored Michael Moorcock when I was a teenager for his fantasy books, right? Which is relevant. Eternal Champion. So the Jewel in the Skull. So the Elric of Melniboné, I think it is. Stories, right? There were various iterations of that. There was the Jewel in the Skull was a great one about a post-apocalyptic Europe where Britain had become totally evil and become the Nazis sort of thing, and they were invading. And the Duke of Köln, I remember, was a central character in that. Then there was another couple. There was one guy whose sword drank your souls. Now, that might have been Stormbringer. Actually, I think there might have been a common power of the Eternal Champion sword. So it was all about. There was also the great stuff about the dancers at the end of time, which I used to love. Which was where these kind of godlike beings, right at the end of kind of Earth's super future history, and their kind of adventures and idyllic lifestyle. I do remember there was one line that made me cackle, which was these amazing superpowered beings, millions and billions of years in the Earth's future, who said, oh, let's go and meet in Wolverhampton. I thought that was very funny. I remember also in the whatever the rune, I think it was the rune staff, the future Europe one, and I think there was a very clever joke about how Errol Wilson was like worshipped like a god, and of course that was Harold Wilson. I think there was another play in words about Ted Heath and about how they'd set up this kind of evil, the roots of this evil British Empire. I thought it was very good. Also, of course, Behold the Man. I do notice from the kind of material that there was a sequel to Behold the Man, which I never got to. But I love Behold the Man, the story about the time traveler who goes back because he's a convinced Christian, and it turns out that he eventually becomes Jesus because of a number of events. Da, da, da. I thought it was an excellent book. I really, really liked the Jerry Cornelius. I didn't read all of Jerry Cornelius. I sometimes feel I should go back to Jerry Cornelius because I think he might have a lot to say about our times. I remember thinking it was very, very clever satire about the terrible state of the world. Bishop Berkeley, I got that joke, and all that kind of stuff. And that's relevant to what I'm about to talk about. So, but then at some point, I kind of, stopped because I must have thought it was juvenilia, really. And I never picked up another Moorcock book for literally decades. I was aware that Gloriana was a thing that had kind of done a crossover, and a lot of people were really impressed by it. And I think there were another couple of things like that. But I came across some kind of reference to this in another context, which was talking about how this was a very interesting book about the sort of horrors of the 20th century and Russian history in particular. And that kind of intrigued me. Obviously, I must have been browsing, playing with the internet one night in 0708, and I kind of bought this from a secondhand bookstore, and then it just sat in the pile. And I'm really, really, really glad it's been rescued from the pile. And I would absolutely both keep this, and I want to now read the other Colonel Piat's. I think this very, very, very interesting, really great literary fiction with a bit of a speculative edge. Okay. I loved, okay, 5-star review. I always forget to do that too early on. 5 out of 5, and I will absolutely keep this. There's no question. Whoa, very windy. Sorry, folks. I think we'll be okay. Carry on now. And no question I won't try, and I'll hunt down the others and I'll read all of this. It's an eternal champion book, it turns out. There's Mrs. Cornelius, who is a figure who pops up, Jerry's mum, and I think there are a couple of Cornelius Sproggs, actually. I can't remember. Maybe a Frank, maybe there was a girl as well, maybe a Catherine. But so she's there, so that's a clue. There's nothing else about it. The Eternal Champion series is really about the forces, the eternal dialectical battle between law and chaos. And so Piat is certainly a chap who lives in chaos. And so what I was so struck by was the surface of the text, the surface of the prose is so sparkling with detail. Really good about this. I mean, I don't know how many. If one could do a computer analysis of this must have more nouns and adjectives than a lot of ordinary books, because there is just every line is detail. So what we have is his life. So he's born in 1900 in Ukraine, and the framing device is that he was a real character in 1970s Notting Hill, Ladbroke Grove, where Moorcock was, and this is where the blurring of the fiction and the metafiction and Hawkwind and yada yada yada, right? So the idea is that Moorcock in real life meets this bloke, he becomes a character. He knows Mrs. Cornelius. They're in the pub together all the time. He eventually agrees to write his life story, and quite Joycean. We have this kind of pile of text in multiple languages and multiple scripts, and some of it's secret, and so Moorcock has asked a friend of his to painstakingly transcribe and understand this complexity, right? And we kind of go from there. So we have this text, which is ostensibly the first kind of bit of Piat's autobiography, his life story. Now, Moorcock's very, very careful to say in lines, first paragraph, that this is the text, this is the voice of a deeply unpleasant, difficult man. So there's, horrendous racism. He's virulently anti-Semitic, and according to this text, so is literally everyone else in Ukraine and revolutionary Russia, apart from the Jews, I guess. That's quite difficult. But then it's a book. It's an unreliable narrator story for sure. Okay, And there's lots of massive complexity about the Civil War and all the kind of personalities and factions within that. But there is enough in there that I know from my understanding of history that that wasn't quite right. Or yeah, so this is an unreliable narrator text, but talking about an incredible journey through a tortured landscape, quite Cormac McCarthy-esque. I was reminded by that a couple of times, quite like Blood Meridian, in that you're going through a crazy land full of crazy, vicious brutes doing insane things to each other. And every day there's some, also another ludicrous, crazy, insane event. But, quite a lot of this did happen, as in Blood Meridian did happen too. So we're dealing with the tortured, and again, it's men, terrible, terrible, terrible men. There are some good female characters, but they are, apart from Mrs. Cornelius, who is an actor in history, for sure. A lot of the other, his mum and his girlfriends and Esme, his friend, they're more kind of victims of history, really. But there's great language, there's great wordplay, there's great imagery, there's great scenes, there's great dialogue, there's great drama, sweep of history. And once you get used to that voice, which is kind of relentless, and it's always the voice, isn't it? Kind of relentless, kind of strange. You'll go off in these kind of like mini fantasy sequences where the text breaks down a bit and he's kind of giving all these cosmic historical predictions and analyses of what went wrong with the Great Russian Soul and what's wrong with the British and all this sort of stuff. Once you get used to it, I absolutely loved it, and I found it stimulating, refreshing, interesting, compulsive. I thought it was an excellent book. I'm going to buy after this call. After this recording, I'm going to buy a copy for my daughter because I'd be really interested in her view on this. And I think it's a tough read. There's no question about it. I mean, it's a big ass, but also there's some brutal, horrible stuff in here. There's a lot of rape. There's not rape described. There is a lot of rape in the events. Okay, well, yeah, okay, leave it at that. So maybe not for everyone, but for me, I thought it was a wonderful, interesting riff on a complex, crazy history, and there's enough in there about the current madness between Russia and Ukraine to give it kind of even contemporary relevance it wouldn't have had in 2007, maybe not even in 1992. So that was all really, really interesting. He wrote it in the 80s, I think, didn't he? I'm going to say 81. So he didn't know what was going to happen, and so all credit. I think I would read the rest of this series. I might do Gloriana because I'm intrigued now. I'm intrigued as this is a man who knows what he's doing. A very, very, very good writer, writing interesting, odd stuff. I mean, and that's me, right? That's what I crave. That's my heroine, right? So, guys, I will stop there. I hope the microphone has beaten the wind, and I'm sorry if there's a crazy angle, but I guess we continue to live and learn. And wow, I hope it heats up a bit because it's a bit much. All right, my friends, talk to you soon.